We operate on a very common, entirely rational belief. Feed a system more information and it's going to make better, faster decisions. But when we look closely at complex networks today, we see the exact opposite happening. The systems with the greatest, fastest access to data are actually the ones most likely to completely freeze. What we're witnessing here isn't an accident or a bug. It is the inevitable effect of a powerful, unseen structural force.
Think about it. You've got information volume on one side and decision velocity on the other. You would completely expect them to rise together, right? Instead, as the sheer volume of data goes up, the velocity drops to zero. And the consequence of this is severe. The exact infrastructure we built to accelerate action is the very thing stopping it entirely. It's as if our rational, local decisions to optimize the flow of data are somehow engineering an inevitable, global failure.
Section 1. The illusion of certainty.
Picture a highly efficient mechanical conveyor belt running inside a massive logistics center. At the end of the line, a sorting gate uses a scanner to read barcode data and correctly route every single package. It's a flawless design, perfectly rational for a predictable environment. But watch what happens as that environment shifts. The data intake accelerates. The conveyor belt starts speeding up, pulling in an endless escalating volume of incoming packages. It's absorbing the mechanical equivalent of thousands of live news feeds, real-time reports, and endless email threads all pouring into a single pipeline. And right away, we can observe this deeply disturbing behavior taking hold. The belt is moving faster than ever before, carrying more weight than it ever has.
But the processing capacity remains entirely fixed. That barcode scanner, no matter how highly advanced it is, still requires a physical, measurable increment of time to process the denser data on each passing box. The machinery is operating exactly as designed. Yet, a profound tension starts to emerge between the terrifying speed of the incoming items and the rigid, unyielding capacity of the scanner.
The result? Output stops completely. Despite a massive, record-breaking intake of information, the system produces zero forward motion. The sorting gate stays firmly shut while the scanner desperately tries to calculate. The system locks itself into an infinite loop of observation, completely unable to release even a single package down the line.
Section 2. Escalating the processing load. Now, you might think the logical fix here is to upgrade the system's awareness, to feed it more data to resolve the bottleneck. The system naturally demands even more variables to eliminate risk and find that perfect solution. We escalate the processing load, acting on the assumption that total certainty will restart the motion and fix the jam. But structurally, this search for certainty mathematically backfires, because new data creates exponentially more variables. Every single new data point we feed in exponentially increases the number of interactions the system has to calculate. It holds tightly to the belief that a superior solution is just one more data point away, stalling out in this endless pursuit with absolutely no concept of diminishing returns. The structural constraint deepens. What we intended as a solution rapidly transforms into the exact weight that crushes the process.
The sorting gate stutters. The scanner is flooded with so many overlapping inputs and complex routing variables that it simply cannot resolve a single directive. Because the gate stutters and stays closed, packages start backing up down the entire length of the speeding belt. The system is systematically trapping itself through its own optimization.
Before we continue, I want to briefly mention Sift, a news app I built. It provides a calmer way to stay informed by highlighting only the most important news and deliberately avoiding endless headlines and sensational content. You can find it through the link in the description. All right, let's get back to exposing the hidden mechanics of this systemic lock-in.
Section 3. The observation trap.
To really expose the hidden constraints behind all this paralysis, we have to look at one single number: 7. Back in the 1950s, psychologist George Armitage Miller identified a very strict cognitive limit. He demonstrated that the human brain, which is of course the ultimate processor at the center of our organizations, can only hold about 7 chunks of information in its working memory at any given time. The hardware itself has an absolute biological threshold.
Understanding that fixed constraint brings us directly to information overload. This happens when input permanently exceeds processing capacity. It's a physical bottleneck. It's the literal gap between the immense volume of data flowing in and the finite tools we have available to actually assimilate it. It is not a personal failure, and it has nothing to do with a lack of willpower. It is a mathematical, structural inevitability that occurs the second our scarce processing resources are completely overwhelmed by infinite data.
And that leads directly to analysis paralysis. When the deep-seated fear of making an error or the desperate desire for a perfect solution outweighs the value of acting in a timely manner, the system unconsciously shuts down.
It suppresses decision-making just to preserve its existing options. The organization, very much like our mechanical sorting gate, structurally chooses not to act at all, rather than risk a suboptimal action based on incomplete processing.
Section 4. Structural lock-in. Escaping from this paralyzed state becomes increasingly impossible, and ironically, it's because of the very frameworks we rely on to process reality. Take the OODA loop, developed by military strategist John Boyd. Observe, orient, decide, act. This four-step cycle is the foundational structure of human decision-making and agility. Any entity survives by processing this cycle efficiently. You observe your environment, you orient yourself to the new incoming data, you decide on a path, and then you act. Boyd realized that your ability to process this loop faster than the environment changes around you is what creates true operational advantage.
But right here is the ultimate structural glitch. The system traps itself in observation. Because of the staggering volume of incoming data we just looked at, the loop permanently traps itself in those first two phases. The system is continuously forced to observe new inputs, endlessly trying to orient itself to a reality that is changing significantly faster than it can ever calculate.
Therefore, action becomes structurally impossible. The orienting phase becomes so saturated with contradictions, expanding variables, and endless risk assessments that the system can never actually reach the decide and act stages. The entire capacity for forward motion is completely consumed by the simple act of processing the present. The loss of alternatives is now absolute.
Section 5. Inevitable system arrests. As the input continues its relentless acceleration and the processing loop remains firmly stuck in observation, the tension reaches critical mass. The mechanical motor seizes. Looking at our conveyor belt one last time, we can watch as the physical system completely collapses under the immense, crushing weight of the unrouted packages. The motor burns out entirely. The exact infrastructure built to move things forward is destroyed by its sheer inability to stop taking things in.
When we look closely at the wreckage of these complex processes, whether we're talking about a frozen global supply chain, a highly indecisive organization, or a burnt-out mechanical belt, we are forced to recognize a cold, mechanistic truth. The system was never failing. It was following its structure. So if infinite information structurally guarantees paralysis, what failing system are you currently feeding with more data?